Tesla recalling nearly 700,000 of its vehicles.
Tesla is recalling more than 376,000 vehicles.
Tesla is recalling almost all of its Cybertrucks due to a cosmetic exterior panel.
Tesla, whose stock has already been in freefall, is now undergoing its biggest recall ever.
What happens when the most hyped electric vehicle of the century turns into one of the biggest automotive letdowns? This isn't fiction, it's happening right now. In this video, we're diving into two explosive stories that are shaking trust in innovation and institutions. Tesla's Cybertruck, once hailed as a game-changer, is now facing production halts, mass recalls, and a growing chorus of angry owners. What went wrong with the design that was supposed to redefine the future of transportation? In 5 years, there'll be some jerk that writes an article, Elon said this would happen, and it didn't happen. He's a liar and a fool. Tesla announced a massive recall impacting nearly 700,000 vehicles, including some of its most iconic models like the Model 3, the Model Y, and most notably, the Cybertruck. At the heart of the issue is a fault with the vehicle's tire pressure monitoring systems. But what's grabbing the most attention isn't just a software glitch, it's the latest chapter in the increasingly rocky rollout of the Cybertruck. Originally revealed in 2019, the Tesla Cybertruck was pitched as a revolutionary leap forward in the electric vehicle space. Its design immediately stood out, all sharp lines, angular corners, and an exposed stainless steel exterior. It looked more like a concept from a sci-fi movie than something you'd see on a suburban driveway. It had no paint, no curves, and none of the usual automotive design cues that make trucks feel familiar. Tesla described it as an armored vehicle from the future, and many believed them. The promises made around the Cybertruck were ambitious. It would be powerful, durable, high-tech, and surprisingly affordable. At least, at the time of its announcement, it was expected to shake up the pickup truck market, dominate EV conversations, and put Tesla even further ahead of traditional car manufacturers. Thousands of people put down deposits almost immediately. The hype was real, but while public interest was strong, actually producing the Cybertruck proved to be a far bigger challenge than Tesla anticipated. Much of the difficulty stemmed from the very thing that made the Cybertruck unique: its body. Tesla decided to construct the vehicle using ultra-hard 30X cold-rolled stainless steel. This material is incredibly strong and resistant to corrosion, but it's also notoriously difficult to work with. Traditional stamping methods used in car manufacturing don't apply easily to such thick and rigid material. This meant Tesla couldn't simply use existing production techniques. They had to redesign significant portions of their manufacturing process. Robots had to be reprogrammed, tools had to be re-engineered, and even basic assembly methods had to be rethought. While this might sound like an exciting engineering challenge, it also introduced unexpected delays and costs. According to people familiar with Tesla's production operations, the company's factories weren't originally equipped to handle the Cybertruck's unique material. From welding issues to panel misalignment, the challenges began to pile up. And while Tesla is known for pushing boundaries and taking risks, in this case, those risks started to show in the final product. When the first few Cybertrucks rolled off the production line in late 2023, they were celebrated by fans and early adopters. Images were shared across social media, and Tesla marked the milestone with promotional fanfare. But, the joy was short-lived. Reports began emerging almost immediately from new owners pointing out strange issues. Some vehicles had body panels that didn't line up properly. Others had visible gaps between the doors and the main cabin. A few owners said their trims were loose or misaligned. These weren't minor cosmetic flaws. They affected how the vehicle handled wind, water, and general wear. Inside the truck, things weren't much better. Tesla had stripped away almost all physical controls, opting instead for a single oversized touchscreen that controlled everything from the mirrors to the air vents to the steering column. While this fit Tesla's minimalist design language, it created usability concerns. Adjusting essential controls like the side mirrors required diving into digital menus, something that many drivers found awkward, especially while the vehicle was in motion. Drivers also complained about the truck feeling unfinished. In some units, weather seals didn't hold up during rain. There were instances of cabin noise being far louder than expected. The materials used in the interior, which were meant to feel modern and premium, were instead described by some as cold and industrial. What was meant to feel futuristic instead felt like a prototype. Beyond aesthetic and comfort concerns, the Cybertruck began facing more serious functional issues. One of the most talked about problems involved the windshield wiper. Due to the truck's large and flat windscreen, Tesla had to design a custom oversized wiper blade, but early tests showed it didn't clean the entire surface properly. It left streaks, couldn't reach the corners, and struggled to cope with heavy rain. That's a major concern for a vehicle intended for all terrains and climates. The keyless entry system, a feature that had become standard across all Tesla models, was another area of concern. Owners reported glitches that left them locked out of their vehicles unexpectedly. Other technical features like the camera systems and lighting configurations also showed irregular behavior. For a vehicle marketed as the future of transport, the Cybertruck was beginning to feel more like a beta test than a finished product. Ironic of all was the truck's supposed selling point, its durability. That stainless steel exterior, which was promoted as being nearly indestructible, turned out to have its own set of downsides. While it might resist dents and scratches better than traditional paint, it was far from maintenance-free. Owners soon discovered it was a magnet for fingerprints and water spots. Keeping it clean required constant attention. Worse still, if the steel did get scratched or damaged, repairs were difficult and expensive. Most body shops weren't equipped to handle the material, leaving owners with limited options and long wait times. At this stage, Tesla found itself facing a difficult truth. The vehicle it had invested years into, and one that had generated so much excitement, was being received not as a bold success, but as a deeply flawed product. Elon Musk himself had warned that production would be insanely difficult, and that prediction was proving to be true. By early 2024, production targets had already been missed. The company was falling behind schedule, and even the units that did make it into customers' hands were causing more headaches than celebration. As the complaints grew louder, industry experts began to weigh in. Reviews from both influencers and auto journalists highlighted the same problems: inconsistent build quality, awkward design choices, and a lack of polish that one wouldn't expect from a vehicle costing upwards of $80,000 after add-ons. By early 2025, the optimism surrounding the Cybertruck had all but vanished. Reports of build quality issues were pouring in. Social media, online forums, and review sites were filled with photos and videos from owners showcasing misaligned body panels, rattling trims, and dashboards that looked like they were installed in a rush. The stainless steel body that had once set the Cybertruck apart was now proving to be a major headache. Owners who had imagined a low-maintenance, near-indestructible exterior were instead dealing with constant cosmetic upkeep. Fingerprints, smudges, and water stains were surprisingly hard to avoid. If the body was scratched or dented, which while rare could still happen, repairs weren't simple. Traditional body shops couldn't fix them. Tesla's service centers, already stretched thin, were often the only option. That meant long waiting times and costly bills for even small damage. Things got worse inside the vehicle. Tesla's decision to control nearly every function through one large touchscreen seemed futuristic at first, but for many drivers, it became a source of daily frustration. Something as basic as adjusting the air vents or side mirrors required multiple steps through digital menus. For users familiar with physical buttons and knobs, this approach felt unnecessarily complicated. Safety experts also raised concerns about the distraction caused by needing to look away from the road to manage basic settings. Then came the hardware issues that couldn't be blamed on subjective opinion. A more stable version could reignite enthusiasm. At the same time, Tesla's competitors weren't waiting around. Other automakers were moving quickly to capture the electric truck market. Ford's F-150 Lightning, a more traditional-looking pickup, was gaining ground thanks to its practicality and familiarity. Rivian's R1T was also being praised for its design and off-road capabilities. These vehicles didn't promise to reinvent the wheel. They just offered dependable performance in a segment that valued it. Chevrolet and GMC were also rolling out new electric models, adding to the pressure. Their approach was more conservative but arguably more effective. Deliver a truck that meets expectations, even if it doesn't break every design convention. This strategy was paying off. With Tesla occupied by recalls and factory delays, competitors had a chance to expand their market share. Tesla's earlier advantage, being ahead of the curve in EV innovation, was beginning to shrink. Where the company once led by years, others were catching up fast. Advances in battery technology, charging infrastructure, and in-car software were no longer unique to Tesla. The EV market had matured, and consumers were now expecting not just innovation but reliability. This left Tesla with an important question. Could the Cybertruck still carve out a space for itself in this new, more competitive environment? To answer that, Tesla had to do more than fix faulty parts. It needed to re-establish confidence in its ability to deliver premium vehicles that worked as promised. Elon Musk remained optimistic. Publicly, he continued to express confidence that Tesla would sort out the issues and relaunch Cybertruck deliveries in late 2025. The timeline was ambitious, but insiders confirmed that Tesla was pushing to implement key improvements before that deadline. These included better materials, stronger adhesives, revised production methods, and updates to onboard technology. One of Tesla's strengths has always been its willingness to adapt quickly. While traditional automakers often take years to cycle through design revisions, Tesla has shown that it can make rapid changes when necessary. This agility could work in its favor if it can be applied effectively to the Cybertruck production line. Financially, however, the situation remained delicate. The paused deliveries, the high cost of recall operations, and the need for factory modifications had all put a strain on resources. At the same time, investor confidence had taken a hit. Analysts were watching closely to see how Tesla would manage the relaunch, and whether the revised Cybertruck could meet the high expectations that had once driven so many pre-orders. Loyal fans' expectations had shifted. The conversation was no longer about whether the Cybertruck was revolutionary. It was about whether it could meet basic quality standards. Could it drive smoothly? Could it handle poor weather? Would the interior hold up over time? These were the kinds of questions potential buyers were now asking. Tesla's challenge wasn't just to deliver a vehicle, it was to repair the public's trust. The Cybertruck had started as a symbol of the company's boldness. Now, it was a test of its responsibility. If Tesla could fix what was broken and prove the vehicle was dependable, it might still have a chance to reshape the market. But the window was narrowing. Every delay gave competitors more space to improve their own offerings and win over disappointed Tesla customers. The company's history shows it's capable of bouncing back from setbacks. The launch of the Model S faced early skepticism. The Model 3 had production issues at the start. In both cases, Tesla managed to recover and even exceed expectations over time. But the Cybertruck was different. It wasn't just about range or speed. It was about an entirely new category and a new identity for Tesla. That made the stakes higher. While Tesla was navigating the Cybertruck crisis, another major story was unfolding on an entirely different front. As he was speaking, we found out that a federal judge declined to temporarily block Elon Musk and Doge from accessing federal data without providing any proof. Elon said USAID is a criminal organization, and we have to remind the folks in the American public that the FBI reports to the Department of Justice and the FBI does not make prosecutorial decisions. What began as a quiet investigation into the misuse of foreign aid funds quickly escalated into one of the most talked about corruption cases in recent memory. The focus turned to USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. This agency is responsible for handling billions of dollars each year, sending financial assistance to various countries to support everything from healthcare and education to infrastructure and disaster relief. For decades, USAID has played a major role in shaping the U.S. presence abroad, particularly in regions facing crisis or extreme poverty. But according to federal investigators, something went very wrong. Evidence began to surface suggesting that massive amounts of money, estimated in the tens of billions, had not been used for their intended purposes. Instead, funds that were meant to build schools, supply hospitals, and help vulnerable populations were being diverted into private accounts, overpriced contracts, and deals that provided little or no benefit to the people they were supposed to help. This revelation triggered a full-scale response. The FBI launched an extensive investigation into where the money had gone and who was responsible. In a move that shocked many inside and outside of government, arrests were ordered for several senior officials connected to USAID. Some of those individuals attempted to flee the country before they could be detained. Others were already under surveillance when the operation was launched. The investigation revealed a network of mismanagement, poor oversight, and, in some cases, outright fraud. At its center were allegations that some USAID staff, in cooperation with private contractors, had set up complex financial arrangements to siphon off funds. These schemes often disguised themselves as legitimate projects, using paperwork and inflated budgets to pass basic scrutiny. But on closer examination, many of the projects had either failed to deliver results or didn't exist at all. One example highlighted by investigators involved a water access program in a drought-stricken region. Official documents claimed that the program had successfully built dozens of wells and provided clean water to thousands of people. but on-site checks revealed only a handful of functioning wells, and several areas that were listed as complete had received no services at all. The missing money amounted to millions of dollars. As word of the scandal spread, the public reaction was swift and emotional. American taxpayers, many of whom had little awareness of the scale of U.S. foreign aid spending, were outraged to learn that so much money had potentially been wasted or worse, stolen. Politicians from both major parties began demanding more transparency and accountability, arguing that every dollar sent overseas needed to be tracked more closely. In response to the unfolding scandal, former President Donald Trump took a bold step. He issued a direct order for the temporary suspension of USAID operations and called for a 90-day freeze on new contracts and international spending. He also pushed for the immediate arrest of any officials found to be involved in fraud or abuse of funds. This move sparked debate across Washington and the international community. Some praised it as a necessary act of leadership. Others criticized it as too broad and politically motivated. Regardless of the political response, the investigation continued. Federal agents began tracing financial transactions and looking into years' worth of aid distribution records. Technology played a major role in helping uncover the web of corruption. Investigators used advanced digital tools to follow money trails across borders and identify patterns that pointed to illegal activity. It became clear that this wasn't just a case of sloppy bookkeeping. It was systemic misuse of public funds on a global scale. The scale of the issue raised serious questions about how aid programs are managed in general. Critics argued that the system lacked basic checks and balances, allowing individuals too much control over large sums of money with too little oversight. They also pointed out that the bureaucratic structure made it difficult to spot fraud early, as reports often had to pass through multiple layers of approval, which made accountability blurry. Calls for reform grew louder. Activists, policy analysts, and even some government insiders began to advocate for clearer financial tracking. One of the more widely supported proposals involved using blockchain technology to create transparent, real-time records of where every dollar went. This would make it much harder for funds to be diverted without detection and could help restore public confidence in the system. For communities abroad that relied on USAID support, the fallout was immediate and damaging. Or unfamiliarity, one of the biggest design challenges was the massive front windshield. Because of its unique size and angle, Tesla had to engineer a custom-built wiper system. But in real-world use, the solution wasn't effective. Owners reported the wiper left large streaks, missed critical areas, and struggled to handle moderate to heavy rain. It was a problem that couldn't be patched with software. It pointed to a flaw in the physical design of the truck. Other issues also began to surface. Some owners experienced malfunctioning doors that wouldn't open consistently. The camera systems, which are critical for visibility and safety on Tesla's driver assist platforms, sometimes glitched or failed to load. There were even cases of the keyless entry system refusing to recognize the driver's phone or card, effectively locking them out of the vehicle without warning. The situation was becoming difficult to ignore. Tesla had built a reputation for solving many of its issues with over-the-air updates, pushing new software directly to vehicles to fix bugs or improve features. But these updates could only go so far when the underlying problem was physical. Whether a faulty pedal, a loose trim panel, or a poorly designed wiper, software alone wasn't enough. Tesla tried to downplay some of the growing criticism, but the issues kept piling up. Just a few weeks before a major announcement in March 2025, Tesla had already issued a recall for nearly 4,000 Cybertrucks due to a stuck accelerator pedal. In that case, the pedal could reportedly become trapped in the down position, increasing the risk of unintended acceleration. For a vehicle as powerful and heavy as the Cybertruck, that's a serious safety risk. Regulatory agencies in the United States took notice and Tesla had to act quickly. But the biggest shock came shortly afterward. In March 2025, Tesla announced that it was recalling every Cybertruck that had been delivered to customers. This wasn't a minor or targeted recall, it was a full-scale operation. Over 46,000 units were affected. The problem, a piece of exterior trim running along the roofline, was coming loose. In some cases, the trim detached completely while the vehicle was moving, particularly at highway speeds. Videos shared online showed fragments flying off, creating dangerous situations for other drivers on the road. Tesla traced the problem back to the adhesive used to attach the trim. Whether the issue stemmed from cost-cutting measures, poor quality control, or an untested bonding method, it became clear that the material just wasn't strong enough. What was intended to be a sleek design element became a potential road hazard. Unlike software fixes, this issue couldn't be solved remotely. Every affected Cybertruck had to be physically brought into a service center for repairs. That meant scheduling appointments, waiting in long queues, and dealing with service teams that in many cases were still ramping up their ability to support this new vehicle. Tesla's infrastructure wasn't yet fully prepared to handle Cybertruck-specific repairs at scale. At this point, production also came to a standstill. Tesla halted deliveries of new Cybertrucks and paused work on unfinished units at its factory in Austin, Texas. While no official statement explained the full reason for the production stop, sources within the company suggested the problems ran deeper than just faulty trim. Behind the scenes, Tesla engineers were reportedly facing a mountain of challenges in meeting quality control standards and keeping the assembly line running smoothly. It was also revealed that Tesla had thousands of trucks sitting idle, either unfinished, recalled, or waiting to be reworked. These vehicles represented not just a technical challenge, but a financial one. With each Cybertruck costing a significant amount to produce and many priced above $80,000 at retail, the total inventory stuck in limbo was estimated to be worth nearly $200 million. For Tesla, a company that prides itself on lean production and rapid delivery, this was a major setback. Shareholders and analysts began to voice concerns about the long-term viability of the Cybertruck project. Some questioned whether the decision to push forward with such an unconventional design had been a strategic misstep. Meanwhile, competitors were watching closely. Rivian, Ford, and other electric truck makers had continued to develop and release vehicles that, while more conventional in design, were performing reliably and avoiding the spotlight of constant recalls. The Ford F-150 Lightning, for instance, didn't promise to reinvent the truck. It simply delivered a dependable electric version of a well-loved model. That approach was winning over buyers who were beginning to grow tired of the Cybertruck drama. Tesla's initial response to the growing problems was to continue issuing patches and software updates where possible, but it became increasingly clear that a more comprehensive fix would be needed. Customers who had waited years for their Cybertrucks were now being asked to wait even longer for service appointments and hardware repairs. Many started to voice frustration and regret. The key challenge wasn't just mechanical, it was reputational. Tesla needed to restore trust both in the Cybertruck and in its broader ability to deliver reliable, future-focused products. For a company that built its image around innovation, speed, and disruption, slowing down and fixing foundational problems required a shift in strategy and tone. Inside Tesla, efforts were already underway. Engineers began reworking the production line, this time with a clearer understanding of the Cybertruck's design limitations. The use of ultra-hard stainless steel, which was central to the truck's visual identity, had introduced unexpected complications. The material's strength made it difficult to bend, weld, and cut using conventional tools. As a result, Tesla had to retrofit factories with specialized equipment, update robotic systems, and reprogram assembly lines. All of this added complexity and cost, but it was necessary if the company wanted to resume production with improved consistency and safety. In addition to fixing the adhesive used in the roof trim, the issue that led to the full recall, Tesla also started addressing other known issues. The oversized wiper blade, which failed to clean the windshield effectively, was being redesigned. Engineers were looking into alternative mechanisms that could better handle the wide and slanted windshield. At the same time, improvements were being made to the software that controlled critical vehicle functions, with a particular focus on making in-car controls more user-friendly. Tesla had always leaned heavily on its ability to push software updates remotely, but this time, the fixes required physical changes. That meant calling customers back into service centers, many of which weren't fully prepared to handle the influx of Cybertruck repairs. Tesla had to increase staffing, provide new training, and stock replacement parts to deal with the demand. Behind the scenes, the company was also reevaluating its messaging. The early Cybertruck promotion focused on breaking the mold, on challenging what a truck should look like, and on offering something radically different. But now the tone was shifting towards reliability and correction. Tesla was no longer selling a dream, it was trying to repair one. Still, not everyone was ready to give up on the Cybertruck. Despite the setbacks, there remained a strong community of Tesla fans and reservation holders who continued to support the vehicle. Many had waited years for their orders and believed the truck still had potential once the initial problems were resolved. Were frozen new aid deliveries. were delayed in some countries. Partners that worked with USAID were left without answers. The uncertainty threatened vital services, especially in places facing conflict, disease outbreaks, or food insecurity. People on the ground began asking a painful question. Would the victims of corruption ultimately be the ones who suffered the most? Meanwhile, the hunt for those responsible intensified. Some officials who were believed to be key players in the misuse of funds had already left the United States, prompting international efforts to track them down. Others were cooperating with investigators in exchange for reduced penalties. Testimonies from whistleblowers provided insight into how deeply rooted the problems were and how long the fraud had gone unchecked. The scandal has had a ripple effect that reaches beyond USAID. Other government departments that handle international projects are now facing increased scrutiny. Lawmakers are proposing legislation that would require detailed reporting on all foreign aid spending and mandate third-party audits. There's a growing belief that without fundamental changes, similar scandals could occur again in the future. Despite the chaos, some experts see this moment as an opportunity. They argue that real reform is possible if it's approached seriously and consistently. Better use of technology, more open reporting systems, and increased involvement from independent watchdog groups could make a meaningful difference. But it will require more than a few arrests or temporary suspensions. It will take a full rethinking of how aid is planned, monitored, and delivered in the long term. The goal is to build a system where every dollar can be traced, where results are clearly measured, and where those responsible for failures face real consequences. This level of accountability is not only important for financial integrity, but for the success of the aid programs themselves. People in crisis zones don't just need promises, they need results. And the only way to ensure that is to make sure the system delivering help is trustworthy. Back in the United States, public interest in the story remains high. News outlets continue to release updates as the investigation unfolds. More names are being revealed, more financial records uncovered, and more pressure is being placed on both current and former officials to explain how this level of misuse was allowed to continue for so long. For now, the story is far from over. What started as a behind-the-scenes audit has turned into a major reckoning for how America manages its role in global aid. Whether this results in lasting reform or just another cycle of media coverage and political speeches will depend on what happens next. But one thing is certain, the demand for transparency is stronger than ever, and the expectation from the public is clear. People want to know that their money is being used wisely, whether it's for a futuristic electric truck or to help families on the other side of the world, and if that trust is broken, those in charge will be held accountable.